Good morning, everyone. This is Jesse Straight with Whiffletree Farm. This is the second part of our deep dive into our hens. We want to give you an idea of how we raise our animals. So last time we talked about our approach to the H1N1 avian influenza and also how we approach pricing. Basically, on the second part, just that we base it on the work it takes and the cost we have, feed, this mobile schooner behind us, the birds, the fencing, all that kind of stuff, not based on global markets, importing, exporting, etc. So I wanted to get into our actual farming practices. So first off, the biggest thing for us is fresh pasture. That's our number one distinction. That's what makes us so special, and that's also what takes a lot of work. Hence they're related. So basically this, we call it a schooner. It's basically like a greenhouse on skids, and it's mobile, and we move it 3 times a week to fresh pasture. This fencing you see over here, that's also mobile, and we basically move their paddocks up with them as they move forward. You can see how lush and rich their pasture is. This isn't a dirt pad because they're getting moved regularly. So that's a big deal for us. And that takes a good amount of work, moving the schooners, setting up the fencing, moving the waters, and then also just all the feeding, so basically having to bring buckets of feed up to them and fill up their feeders and all that kind of stuff. And of course, gathering the eggs. So that's a big thing for us. Additionally in the feed, there's no antibiotics. The feed is non-GMO. It's not sprayed with any herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, anything like that. Then also how we process the eggs. We don't use any bleach to wash our eggs. Most of our eggs are not washed because we basically just keep them clean from the start. So those would be the big parts of this. I want to walk in and show you inside the schooner. It's going to get a little bit loud. So we'll just kind of go over here, and I'll track with you here, and we'll go inside the schooner and check out what their setup's like. So this is about 7 in the morning. The hens are eager to be laying eggs at this point. So you can see the nest boxes around there that I just opened up, and the birds are in their nest boxes. They have those curtains so that the hens feel nice and private and safe in there laying their eggs. You'll see the feeders here, these red feeders. That's where we put their feed, and that goes down. And then their water troughs are out back. We'll walk out there and see those. So we'll check this out. But again, even in here where there's the most impact, there's manure on the ground, but this isn't a sort of overgrazed area. So there you can see their drinker that we clean out regularly. The fencing, of course, is to keep them safe from ground predators. And it's also for us to keep them where we want them so that they're not grazing one spot too long or too short. So we can kind of manage, where they are. So that's the basics on how we raise our hens. Again, the big thing here is the fresh pasture. As you can imagine, like moving, this is about 1,200 hens. Moving 1,200 hens around 3 times a week to fresh pasture and keeping them safe from predators, and managing all the water, feed, and eggs. It's simpler, in a sense. If you were to put them in a stationary building, you can automate the feed, you can automate the eggs in terms of conveyor belts and things like that, augers. But then you lose this. So then you're basically putting animals on concrete. And that was the other thing I wanted to cover was just the sort of honesty in marketing. So a lot of, after talking with customers, a lot of customers, are asking me questions about like, what's the deal with the eggs that are pasture raised in the grocery store? And the basic deal is those hens are raised in stationary buildings that then have access to outdoor pasture. That's might seem like not a big deal, but it's a really big deal. Basically, like to actually have hens on fresh pasture, you have to have mobile housing. Because you can see here, like the predominance of the hens are within, 20 yards of that station, of that mobile house. And if I were to leave that house and give them this whole field, they would still mostly use what's 20 yards from that house, because feed, water, their nest boxes, shelter, protection from predators, they're, and they're not big animals. They have small legs. They're not going to walk that far. So basically, if you were to go check out some of those stationary housing of the pasture-raised eggs in the grocery store, you'd see that the area all around the stationary house is a denuded, overgrazed, over-fertilized area. And that's just because the nature of hens, for those reasons I mentioned. So to not have that, to have it not be overgrazed, over-fertilized, you have to have mobile housing. But of course, when you're raising 10,000 birds at a time, and you got a certain efficiency that you're committed to in terms of labor per egg and all that kind of thing, then that gets sacrificed, and the stationary house rules the day. But the stationary house does not do what you want it to do. It basically means the birds are raised on dirt and concrete, which is not pasture raised. So that's the thing. And most people, when they see that marketing, they don't know those details, and for good reason. Most of us, I didn't grow up a farmer. Most of us aren't farmers, but that's a part of our mission, is to help teach you about what goes into raising animals well. Like, what does an animal need? And we're trying to give that. We also want you to understand, what we know and are learning. So anyway, just want to give you a heads up there that to actually be raised on pasture, not on dirt, not on concrete, you got to have mobile housing. None of the big boys are doing mobile housing for all those reasons mentioned. But this is where the game changer is, because when those birds can have access to these grasses, that's the other thing, is these grasses, these are plants that have lived here for decades. Their root structure is really deep and complex, as opposed to the grains that birds are otherwise getting, the corn and soybeans. Those are annuals that grow in 3 or 4 months and die. So you can imagine a plant that grows and lives and dies within 3 or 4 months is only going to have so much of a root structure and pull up a certain spectrum of nutrients. Whereas a plant that's here for decades, that has an immense, complex root structure, is going to be pulling a totally different spectrum of nutrients up. This is why it's so healthy for the birds to be eating this grass. So anyway, those are some of the things. Hopefully I didn't go on too long, and I hope that is helpful to you all. Thank you so much for supporting us. We try and do everything with integrity from start to finish, how we raise the birds, and also how we communicate and market. And we appreciate your care and discernment and your support. Thank you so much.